Hi, my name is Mr. E. Of all the things that we've discussed over this season of vlogs, discovering 21st century society, one of the most interesting elements is how public opinion, or more directly, how thought, is controlled in this time. The mainstream media and its control on the conversations that people have, or just as importantly, that they don't have, is a force so powerful that it dictates the course of human history. Now, I know that sounds dramatic, but hear me out. In a free society, control cannot be maintained directly through force, so you must control people's minds. Let's investigate that idea.
My name is Mystery. For reasons unknown, I have been thrown back into the past almost 100 years, and this is my story.
Since the age of revolutions and the liberalization of the world, much emphasis has been put on literacy and education of not the privileged classes, but for the first time in human history, the masses, or the general public. Now, before you go thinking, well, what a wonder of the modern age, the intent of having a literate population is not altruistic. But it is so. The workforce in an industrialized world can be skilled and productive more readily. Literate workers are more efficient to use. But beyond this business function, there is a much deeper manipulation of a literate society in a liberalized world. Literate populations can be controlled through targeted media consumption by keeping them thinking about the right stuff only. Now hold that thought. It is important for us to first understand how powerful literacy is for humanity. Now it's arguable that the only reason we had the Age of Revolutions, the Enlightenment, and the liberalization of the world from the bonds of feudalism is because of the invent of the printing press and the proliferation of literacy rates. In medieval Europe, as the Bible began to be printed en masse in many languages, people began to read it and interpret its meaning for themselves. This led to the breaking up of the church, the Reformation, and as a result, the redistribution of power and understanding of how the world should work. As people began to write, print, and digest literature, ideas flourished and spread throughout the civilized world, revolutionizing societies, all thanks to an information boom. Thus is the power of the written word, the transfer of ideas that gain enough traction to revolutionize societies and then humanity forever. However, as demonstrated by this progression, literacy is incredibly dangerous for a ruling class. The dissemination of literature that makes people question life and freedom is the stuff that topples power structures. So in every successful modern society, the ones based on liberal ideals and democracies, there is a grave need to control public thought while maintaining the perception of a free society. This control is done through propaganda, which seems to have a negative connotation in this time, but that is a recent idea. Propaganda is just a form of communication aimed at influencing attitudes of an audience in order to progress an agenda. This is neutral, and depending on how you use it, it will have positive or negative consequences. The main source of propaganda today, I would say, is the mainstream media. It was the turbulence of the late 1800s into the early 1900s which really spawned the mechanisms of how contemporary society is controlled through the media. This time in history was one in the industrialized world that was characterized by great political activism by the working classes, the maturing of power of the labor movement, and the peak of social democracy, challenging the foundations of imperialism. It was the literate working populations of the world, with their own forms of literature, engaged readerships, and distribution networks, that were challenging the foundations of the world's power structures. So, It was at this time where the bourgeois media and the state was seeking to bring to an end this literal freedom of the press. If people were to be literate, they shouldn't be spreading and consuming their own ideas. It is dangerous to have people spreading, anti-establishment and revolutionary ideas within a society. So if you have enough capital, power, and political sway, you buy up and destroy. And I mean that literally, the competition. A society with free press and diverse readership is hard to stabilise and control for a ruling elite. With the absorption of much of the free press, thanks to convenient propaganda campaigns, helped by political manoeuvres and critical events like world wars, media was centralised and capitalised by a ruling class to control public discourse and, importantly, public opinion. And over the last 100 years, this has been ever more perfected and concentrated, rather impressively. The largest media organisations in the world today are owned by a select number of multinational corporations. They basically decide each day what the world will talk about. And whether you're a media outlet with direct ties to this cabal or not, you carry out the same conversation out of fear of missing the big stories. And so a limited conversation is planted and comes to life across the world. So the next time you are, surfing the net, feeding off your favourite news sites, the ones you look to for reliable news, do a little case study. What is being talked about across each site? Do similar articles pop up covering similar issues? Sometimes even with similar headlines or the same content. This is no coincidence. This is the mainstream media landscape, a deadly combination of journalists towing the line and not wanting to miss out on the big stories, and the money behind the media source. The one thing, if not the stories, that is consistent about every news site, every paper, on every screen, is advertisements. So, always ask yourself, even from the most trusted news sources, why do they want me to read this? And who's paying for me to see it? Now, if you have any opinions on this, please comment below. And if you thought this was interesting, please like it and share it. Until next time, please remember, I am, you are, we are a mystery.